July 25, 1944, 9:38 a.m. near Saint-Lô, Normandy. The ground shakes before the sound arrives. A low, rolling pressure presses into the chest, like the earth itself is drawing a breath. Then the sky opens. Thousands of Allied bombers tear overhead, their shadows racing across hedgerows and shattered farmhouses. Explosions march forward in precise rows, lifting soil, steel, and men into the air. German soldiers press their faces into the dirt, helmets rattling, teeth clenched, praying the next blast lands somewhere else. This is not an attack. It is an erasure. For weeks, the Western Front has been frozen in blood and mud. Since D-Day, Allied forces have been trapped in Normandy's bocage country, fighting field by field, hedge by hedge. Progress measured in yards, casualties measured in thousands. German defensive doctrine, elastic, layered, stubborn, has done exactly what it was designed to do. Hold. And at the center of that doctrine stands Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, commander of Army Group B, the Desert Fox. The man who believes that wars are won by anticipation, by preparation, by forcing the enemy to bleed before momentum can build. Rommel believes Normandy can still be saved. But as the bombing continues, something is already going wrong. The German front line near Saint-Lô is not just being suppressed, it is being hollowed out. Communications are severed. Unit boundaries vanish. Officers are killed where they stand. Survivors stumble through smoke, unable to tell east from west. And when the bombing finally lifts, when the roar fades into a ringing silence, there is no pause. American artillery opens immediately, then machine guns, then the unmistakable clatter of tank tracks. This is Operation Cobra. And this is the moment the war in the West begins to move faster than Germany can think. 200 miles away, Rommel is not at the front. He is in Germany. Earlier that month, Allied fighter bombers had strafed his staff car near Liverot. The attack nearly killed him, fracturing his skull and leaving him barely conscious. Against his will, he had been sent home to recover. For the first time in the campaign, the man who built the defenses is not there to command them. In his absence, orders are cautious. Reserves are held back. Panzer divisions wait for clarity that never comes. And into that hesitation steps Lieutenant General George S. Patton. Patton has been waiting for this moment. For weeks, Third Army has existed only on paper, a coiled force of armor, infantry, engineers, and logistics units held behind the lines. German intelligence knows Patton is dangerous, but they believe terrain will slow him. They believe fuel shortages will limit him. They believe any breakthrough will require time to consolidate. They believe wrong. At 11:00 a.m., American units punch through the shattered German line west of Saint-Lô. By nightfall, gaps appear where there should be divisions. By the next morning, Patton's headquarters receives the order it has been anticipating since Normandy. Exploit. No pause, no reorganization, no waiting for flanks to be secured. Patton does not expand the breach. He pours through it. You can almost feel the shift. Where days ago soldiers crawled forward under fire, now columns of Sherman tanks roll at speed. Dust clouds rise over narrow French roads. Engineers throw down bridges without stopping the march. Radios crackle constantly, orders flowing faster than couriers ever could. Patton's doctrine is simple and merciless. Bypass resistance, leave it to follow on units and keep moving. German strongpoints are suddenly irrelevant. A battalion digs in, expecting a frontal assault. Instead, American armor appears on their flank. Then their rear vanishes again, racing west and south, cutting roads, seizing crossroads, severing supply lines. German commanders send frantic messages requesting permission to withdraw, to reposition, to counterattack. The replies come too late, or not at all. This is not the slow Allied advance Rommel planned for. This is something else. Something fluid, unpredictable, relentless. Within 48 hours, Third Army is advancing so fast that maps become outdated by the hour. Fuel trucks race to keep up. Infantry ride tanks when they can, walk when they must. The front line ceases to exist as a line at all. It becomes a series of collapsing pockets. In German headquarters, confusion hardens into disbelief. Reports contradict each other. Units listed as holding positions are suddenly gone. Others report American forces miles behind the front, where they are not supposed to be. Panzer divisions that should be counterattacking are stuck without fuel, their movements strangled by Allied air power. Rommel's entire defensive philosophy, hold, counterpunch, stabilize, depends on time. Patton is stealing that time. And as the Third Army surges into Brittany, the truth begins to emerge, even to those who refuse to say it aloud. The line has not bent. It has snapped. But Rommel is still not there to see it. And when he finally begins to understand what Patton has done, it will already be too late to stop him. The first warning comes not as a report, but as silence. German headquarters waits for confirmations that never arrive. Telephone lines hum uselessly. Radio traffic is a chaotic blur of overlapping voices, half-finished sentences, static. Units that should be responding simply vanish from the map, not destroyed, not overrun. Gone. By July 27th, Patton's armored columns are no longer exploiting a breakthrough. They are rewriting the geography of the war. Roads meant for carts and cattle thunder under steel tracks. Villages wake to the sound of engines and find American tanks already passing through, gunners scanning rooftops, infantry waving civilians back as they surge forward. There is no pause to fight for towns. Patton doesn't want towns. He wants time. And time is the one resource the German army in Normandy no longer has. To understand the shock, you have to understand German expectations. Rommel's defensive doctrine assumes that any Allied advance must slow once it leaves prepared supply routes. Fuel consumption would spike. Communications would strain. Units would outrun their artillery and infantry support. At that moment, German panzer divisions would counterattack, sealing the breach and restoring the front. That moment never comes. Patton refuses to let it. His headquarters moves constantly, leapfrogging forward. Staff officers work from jeeps and borrowed farmhouses. Orders are issued in fragments adjusted on the move. When a road is blocked, columns reroute without waiting for permission. When resistance stiffens, Patton's tanks simply go around it. Speed is not a byproduct. It is the strategy. And the Germans have no answer for it. On July 28th, elements of Third Army reach Coutances. By the 30th, they are beyond Avranches, the gateway to Brittany. This was supposed to be a defensive anchor. Instead, it becomes a funnel. American forces pour through. Patton splits his army like a blade. One edge drives west toward the ports of Brittany. The other turns east, threatening to roll up the entire German position in Normandy from behind. German commanders argue desperately over what to do. Should they hold Brittany? Should they counterattack south? Should they retreat east before encirclement becomes inevitable? Every option requires coordination. Coordination requires time. Patton gives them none. In the field, the experience is terrifying. German infantry units dig in at crossroads, convinced they will delay the Americans long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Instead, American tanks appear from unexpected directions, supported by fighter-bombers that scream down out of a clear sky. P-47 Thunderbolts rake roads and columns, pinning men in ditches as armor advances unopposed. Even elite units feel the strain. Panzer crews sleep beside their vehicles, engines cold, fuel tanks low. Orders change by the hour. Counterattacks are planned, then canceled, then resurrected too late. When they finally move, Allied aircraft find them immediately. Patton is not just advancing faster than expected. He is moving faster than the German command system can react. Back in Germany, Rommel receives fragmentary updates during his recovery. At first, he assumes exaggeration. Breakouts always look dramatic in their early stages. He has seen this before in France in 1940 in North Africa. Momentum can be checked. Lines can be restored. But then the maps arrive. Markers placed days ago are now meaningless. Arrows drawn confidently toward the coast are suddenly pointing at empty space. Reports speak of American columns 50, 60 miles beyond their last confirmed positions. Rommel studies the situation in silence. This is not a localized failure. It is systemic. His entire defense has been bypassed. What Rommel understands, perhaps before anyone else, is that Patton has broken an unspoken rule of warfare. Conventional doctrine demands consolidation. Flanks must be secured, supply lines protected, advances paused to prepare for counterblows. Patton ignores all of it. He is gambling that chaos favors the attacker. And he is right. German units that might have counterattacked are instead retreating in pieces. Divisions meant to anchor defenses are chasing ghosts. Every attempt to restore order creates new gaps elsewhere. The battlefield is no longer something Germany can shape. It is something happening to them. By early August, the consequences are unavoidable. Hitler issues orders demanding ground be held at all costs. Withdrawals are forbidden. Counterattacks are mandated without regard for fuel, air cover, or coordination. The result is predictable. Units die where they stand. Others disintegrate trying to obey impossible commands. Patton's columns continue to roll, now threatening to encircle entire German armies still fighting north of them. The possibility that the Western Front could be stabilized, the last hope of buying time for Germany, begins to evaporate. And Rommel, watching from afar, reaches a conclusion he has never admitted before. This is not a setback. This is the beginning of the end. But the most devastating realization is still ahead. Because Patton is not slowing down. He is turning east, directly toward the German rear. By August 3rd, the chaos becomes tangible. German units in Normandy are no longer cohesive formations. What were once proud divisions now exist as fragmented pockets of men and machine guns, scattered across farmland and ruined villages. Morale crumbles faster than the hedgerows themselves. Officers scream into radios, trying to rally units that do not answer. Tank crews abandon their vehicles to avoid encirclement. Soldiers dig foxholes only to find the next American column already rolling past them, cutting off their escape. Patton's advance is surgical. He does not aim to destroy everything in his path, only to unbalance, to make coordination impossible. Infantry rides on tanks to keep up the momentum. Engineers bridge rivers before a single shot is fired. Supply trucks, carrying fuel and ammunition, follow closely, ensuring the pace never falters. Every movement is calculated, yet executed with a ferocious improvisational edge. And then there are the airstrikes. P-47 Thunderbolts slice across the sky in strafing runs, artillery coordinates with terrifying precision, and bomb craters render roads impassable. Where German doctrine expected slowing, attrition, and negotiation with time, the Americans offer none. In headquarters far from the front, Rommel finally absorbs the reports. Lines that were supposedly anchored by Panzer Lehr and the 12th SS Panzer Division have dissolved. Bridges meant to stall the Americans are abandoned. Supply depots are destroyed or captured before they can be used. And worst of all, the Third Army moves with a speed and fluidity he cannot anticipate from behind a desk. Rommel scribbles notes in his journal, the pen scratching like a ticking clock. They move like shadows across the land. Nothing we prepared holds them. It is an admission that chills him, not just because it is true, but because he understands its implication. The Western Front is no longer a controllable defensive position. It has become a battlefield of opportunity for the attacker, and Germany is reacting too slowly to influence it. Meanwhile, Patton's staff is not merely marching forward. They are reading the battlefield in real time. Reconnaissance units report gaps, isolated units, and abandoned roads. Intelligence officers relay this to the front, where armored columns instantly exploit it. Resistance is bypassed, and strongpoints are neutralized later if at all. This is war executed at an industrial tempo, fluid, relentless, and unthinkable to the German command. German officers begin to whisper among themselves. The words collapse and irreversible slip into conversations once filled with hope of recovery. Supplies are overstretched. Communications are failing. Orders issued by Corps and Army headquarters cannot reach the men who need them. The front is fragmenting from within, more lethal than any frontal assault could ever be. Even Hitler senses something shifting. Orders are sent, strident and uncompromising: hold ground at all costs, counterattack immediately, no withdrawal. Yet the orders arrive too late. Panzer divisions, fuel depleted and disoriented, cannot respond. Infantry units follow commands without coherence, only to be mown down or surrounded. German tactical doctrine collapses under its own rigidity, and Patton's speed exploits every flaw. In the towns around Avranches, civilians watch with stunned disbelief. American tanks roar past, their crews laughing, waving, sometimes helping frightened villagers to safety. The streets smell of smoke, crushed earth, and gunpowder. Yet there is also awe of force moving faster than thought itself. And Rommel, recovering slowly in his hospital bed, finally allows himself to face the truth he has denied for days. The principles he spent years crafting to hold the West have failed. Speed and maneuver, relentless momentum, and bold improvisation have unmade the defenses he trusted. This realization comes with a bitter clarity. Germany no longer controls the battlefield in Normandy. Patton does. But even as despair takes hold, Rommel knows the worst is yet to come. Because once Patton has momentum, there is no turning back. The Third Army is not merely advancing. It is reshaping the very map of the campaign, and the gap between German hope and American action is widening by the hour. And somewhere in the chaos, Patton is already plotting his next move deeper into Brittany, further east, cutting lines of retreat, leaving the Germans to scramble for what little remains. Rommel understands, with a sinking certainty, that this is the moment when the Western Front can no longer be stabilized. The dominoes are falling. By August 5th, the Third Army's advance is no longer measured in miles. It is measured in hours. American tanks have carved a corridor through the heart of Normandy, leaving German units stranded like ships caught in a storm. Roads that once held columns of panzer divisions now host endless convoys of Sherman tanks, half-tracks, and jeeps. Artillery rolls forward without pause. Infantry units leapfrog the armor, clearing pockets of resistance that no longer have the strength to fight. Patton moves as if the battlefield itself obeys him. There is a rhythm, a pulse to the advance. Reconnaissance planes scout ahead, radio operators coordinate movements, engineers bridge rivers, repair roads, and demolish obstacles in real time. Nothing slows the Third Army. Every delay, every hesitation, every attempt at German defense is absorbed and rendered irrelevant. German command begins to fracture. Divisional commanders report gaps in the line. Corps commanders demand reinforcements that do not exist. Orders contradict each other. Fuel shortages strangle panzer mobility. Communication lines collapse under constant bombardment. Staff officers argue over which towns must be held, which positions can be abandoned. And above it all, Rommel's doctrine, the very backbone of German defense, is revealed as brittle. At headquarters in Germany, Rommel receives new intelligence. Maps show American armored columns moving almost at will. Supply depots are captured before German units can reach them. Roads that were to be defensive arteries are now highways for destruction. He realizes the Allies are no longer attacking, they are dictating reality. The shock is total. German soldiers trained to dig in and hold find themselves isolated. Panzer crews wait for orders that never come. Infantry units cling to villages only to be bypassed entirely. Radios crackle with fragmented reports. Enemy in rear, unit missing, retreat impossible. Panic spreads faster than bullets. Patton's genius is terrifying in its simplicity: speed as a weapon. Bypass strongpoints. Exploit gaps. Keep moving. The Americans do not pause to consolidate. They do not wait for logistical perfection. Every hesitation is for the Germans an opportunity that no longer exists. In avalanches, the culmination of the breakout, the Third Army meets little organized resistance. Streets echo with the roar of engines and shouts of American soldiers. Civilians watch, mouths open, as columns of armor advance without pause. Smoke rises from abandoned German positions. Explosions punctuate the air like punctuation in a sentence written by relentless momentum. Rommel's realization is grim. He had built the Western Front to hold for weeks, perhaps months. Now, in less than 48 hours, that front has disintegrated. His defensive doctrine, the hedgerows, the strongpoints, the fallback positions, has been bypassed, circumvented, and rendered useless. German units are collapsing from within, not because of overwhelming force, but because the speed and adaptability of the Americans render their positions meaningless. He writes in his notes, the words stark and unadorned. "We are too slow. The enemy moves faster than we can react. Normandy is lost. No strategy remains. No plan will save them." And as Patton's Third Army continues to surge, the Western Front, the entire hope of halting the Allies, is unraveling hour by hour. But the final blow is psychological. The German command had believed they could recover control once the initial shock passed. They believed terrain, fuel shortages, and rigid doctrine would buy time. Now, each report contradicts the next. Each defensive line is meaningless. Each attempt to regroup is met with another American column, moving faster, striking deeper. Patton has done what Rommel and the Wehrmacht never imagined. He has made momentum itself the master of the battlefield. The Western Front no longer exists as a line to defend. It exists as a trail of confusion, collapse, and relentless American motion. And Rommel knows the moment Germany feared most has arrived. Patton will not stop. The Third Army is already pivoting to encircle remaining German forces, leaving shattered units behind to be swallowed by the advancing tide. For Germany, hope is gone. For the Allies, the breakthrough is just the beginning. August 6, 1944. Rommel finally returns to Normandy, though only in fragments of reports and worn maps. His body is weak from injuries, but his mind, razor-sharp as ever, begins to grasp what has already occurred. He studies the latest intelligence in silence. Arrows on maps no longer indicate enemy positions. They mark trails of destruction, lines of retreat, and gaps where divisions should be. He sees reports of entire panzer battalions isolated, surrounded by American armor, unable to coordinate. Villages meant to anchor defenses are empty, abandoned, or already in enemy hands. Supply lines are cut, roads jammed with destroyed vehicles and desperate soldiers. And then it hits him: the Germans are not losing because of brute force. They are losing because they cannot keep up. They are being outpaced, outmaneuvered, outthought in motion. Rommel's mind flashes back to the desert campaign, to the African sands where he moved swiftly and decisively, dictating the battlefield. He knows the rules: speed, anticipation, surprise. And yet here the roles are reversed. The Desert Fox is watching a younger American general execute the very tactics he perfected decades earlier, with more resources, more coordination, more relentless momentum. In a quiet moment, he writes in his notes, Patton moves as if time itself bends to his will. The line is gone. The front is gone. Normandy cannot be held. This is the moment of shock, not the physical shock of shellfire, but the intellectual shock that comes with realizing your entire defensive philosophy is obsolete. Months of preparation, careful placement of forces, and meticulous strategy are rendered meaningless by audacity, speed, and relentless execution. In the field, German officers and soldiers are beginning to grasp the same truth. Panzer crews exchange grim looks, infantrymen drop to their knees in exhaustion and frustration. Orders contradict reality. Attempts at counterattacks fail before they begin. The notion of holding the line, once sacred, is now absurd. Patton's army does not slow. Bridges are repaired instantly, roads cleared, reconnaissance fed directly into tank columns. Every time the Germans try to stabilize a sector, American units appear behind them. Retreat is disorganized, counterattacks impossible, morale plummeting. By August 7th, the full weight of Patton's advance becomes apparent. Brittany's ports, critical for German logistics, are threatened. Units that should anchor the front are scattered, encircled, or in full retreat. And somewhere in the chaos, Rommel, even weakened, feels the deepest sting of defeat, not in loss of territory, but in loss of control. The Germans had been confident they could slow the Americans. They had believed their defenses, their doctrine, and their rigid organization would buy time. Now, all that confidence turns to disbelief, then panic. The Western Front is no longer a defensive theater. It is a battlefield dictated by a man who refuses to wait, a man who turns speed itself into a weapon. And in the quiet of his study, Rommel allows himself one final, bitter acknowledgement. The war in the West is no longer in our hands. In the American rear, Patton is already looking forward. The breakthrough was never the goal. Momentum is. Speed is. The exploitation of chaos, the relentless pressure that prevents the enemy from regrouping, is the victory itself. Soldiers joke about his impatience, about his constant demands for movement, for speed, for audacity. But for them, every mile gained means fewer lives lost. Every German strongpoint bypassed brings them closer to the heart of France. And while Rommel contemplates collapse, Third Army does what it does best. It keeps moving, leaving only destruction and disbelief in its wake. Germany has realized the truth too late. In war, sometimes speed, daring, and unrelenting momentum matter more than numbers, doctrine, or even experience. And that realization, when it finally arrives, is devastating. The Western Front is broken, the line has snapped, and Patton, relentless, unstoppable, is already gone beyond the horizon. By mid-August, the Third Army's advance is no longer just a breakthrough. It is a revolution in motion. German forces in Normandy are fragmented, exhausted, and scattered. Divisions that were once cohesive now exist as small pockets of resistance, moving without order, communicating without clarity. Roads are clogged with abandoned tanks, vehicles, and retreating soldiers. Bridges and towns, the anchors of defense Rommel relied on, are lost, destroyed, or bypassed entirely. Patton's columns do not pause. They strike west toward the ports of Brittany, cutting supply lines and sealing off potential retreats. They pivot east to threaten the German rear, leaving chaos in their wake. American artillery and air power coordinate seamlessly with armor, creating an almost unstoppable juggernaut of destruction. Rommel, observing from Germany and in fragments of reports from the field, is forced to confront a bitter truth. The Western Front can no longer be stabilized. Every plan to regroup, to slow the advance, to reestablish a line, is now impossible. Every hope that German discipline and doctrine could buy time has been shattered. He writes in his journal, the words almost trembling, "Patton has done what we never expected. He has turned our own rules against us. The line is gone. Normandy is lost." This is the emotional core of defeat. Not loss of men, not loss of equipment, but loss of control. The front that Germany had spent months preparing is no longer theirs to manage. The battlefield is dictated entirely by the speed, audacity, and relentless momentum of one American general. In the field, German soldiers feel it before the generals do. Encircled units, abandoned positions, and constant harassment by air and armor erode morale. Many surrender not because they are overwhelmed by firepower, but because order itself has collapsed. The Western Front, a line they were trained to hold at all costs, has ceased to exist as a coherent entity. For Patton and his men, the operation is nearly flawless. The breakthrough from Normandy demonstrates the power of audacity combined with meticulous planning, coordination, and exploitation of chaos. It is a textbook example of maneuver warfare executed at unprecedented speed. But more than that, it is a story of psychological domination. By moving faster than the enemy can think, Patton dictates the terms of battle without ever needing to engage every defender. By the time Rommel receives final reports, Third Army is already consolidating in Brittany, securing ports, and preparing to push further into France. Normandy is a patchwork of devastation and abandonment, a testament to what happens when speed and initiative collide with rigid doctrine. For historians, the breakout from Normandy is remarkable, but for those who lived it, soldiers, commanders, civilians, it is unforgettable. The horror of sudden collapse, the awe of unstoppable momentum, the disbelief that a front could vanish almost overnight, these are the moments that define this chapter of the war. Patton's advance is more than a military maneuver. It is a revelation that doctrine and preparation are vital, but initiative, speed, and audacity can break even the most disciplined defenses. Rommel, the master of anticipation, had predicted much, but even he could not foresee how quickly the Western Front would unravel under Patton's relentless drive. The Third Army moves onward, Germany scrambles, and the Western Front, as it had been known, ceases to exist. The moment when a line snaps, when momentum becomes master, when defeat is understood too late, that is the story of Normandy in the summer of 1944.